Bismillah, salatu salam ala Rasulullah. Welcome once again to our podcast on teens, tech, and AI. Today, we have a fantastic guest for you. I've let him go ahead and introduce himself. Bismillah, Zyad.
Assalamualaikum. Fantastic is is overstretching. Uh, Assalamualaikum, everybody. My name is
Bismillah.
Zyad Elgohary. I'm originally from Egypt, but I have lived in Seattle and San Francisco pretty much my whole life. I started out as a software engineer, studied computer science at the University of Washington, worked in tech for a little bit, just as an engineer at a few different companies. And then I started a few different companies with a couple of friends that I'd made along the way. And yeah, we can kind of get into that.
MashaAllah, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much. I think when a lot of people look at you, a lot of people actually know you very much. They probably see the company running guy, the YC guy, and all of that. But on this podcast today, we want to like stretch it back and go all the way back. So you said you've lived in Washington and San Francisco. Take us way back. How did all of this start? Elementary school, middle school, if you can go that way back, and let's sort of go back that way.
All the way back. Okay.
Yes.
I was a very sports guy growing up. Yeah, I was born and raised in the kind of Seattle area, mostly in like Redmond, Kirkland, Woodinville. My parents had immigrated before I was born from Egypt, so I grew up here, and I was very connected to sports in some way. So I played a lot of soccer, played basketball, played some football, and I was always very connected to the Muslim community. My mom and a bunch of other moms growing up would like organize Quran classes and Islamic studies classes and things like that. So I would be at the mosque, like maybe 4 or 5 times a week for
Mhm,
classes or meeting up with friends and things like that.
mhm,
And honestly, I actually wasn't really into computers that much until much later.
mm.
I wasn't into like the coding stuff until like some
Okay.
people had started, back in like third grade or something. That was not
Mhm.
me. I didn't get into that stuff until like high school, but I was always into just like tech stuff. Like I had an iPhone very early.
Mhm,
I remember begging my parents for an iPhone, like
mhm,
3GS, I think was like the first one I
mhm,
had. I was a very big like Xbox guy growing up as well. Played a lot of random from FIFA to like shooter games to like pretty much everything, Minecraft, all that kind of stuff growing up. Um, but yeah, I was very it was a very fun childhood. I'd say, yeah, like elementary and middle school, my family moved around a couple times, so I ended up attending like three different elementary schools, and then two different middle schools, and then a completely different high school. Um, so my dad had moved around a couple times for work. So I ended up meeting a lot of cool people growing up, and I just had to learn how to make friends in new places. But it was consistently, I think, sports that was like that drew me to different people. I would just like go to the soccer field and whoever was like playing, that's my new group of friends. Even at the masjid, like you just show up at maps or something and you go to the basketball court and whoever is there, that's like your new group of friends.
mm.
So yeah, that was my life growing up.
Wow, that's interesting because I would assume that somebody who moved like a lot would then start new friends here, go and then sort of have to restart making friends here. And one of the things you mentioned, just going to like the soccer field and just like anybody you meet there, that sort of exhumes like this extrovertness stuff. Do you think you were like an extrovert or that was just like a normal thing?
Yeah, I never I actually didn't until today I don't really consider myself an extrovert
Mhm,
actually.
mhm,
I like if you were just to ask me, I would say I'm introverted because I like I'm most productive when I'm just kind of like in my zone,
mhm,
and like there's not constant messages to distract me or bother me. But um I I think during that part of life, I just enjoyed like the thing itself. Like I enjoyed playing soccer or I enjoyed playing basketball. So it was more about just like I wanted to do it and you had to do it with other people, so I would just go and play with other folks.
I see.
But I don't think I don't consider myself much of an extrovert actually. Um, uh, but I was into like mostly team sports, so
I
like
see.
that, like mostly basketball, football, soccer, and those are all like very team dynamic sports.
Mm,
And until today, like I do enjoy being around people. Like it's definitely when you're surrounded by right people, it's like usually very fun. Um, but when I look at people that are like actually extroverts and they're like the more they hang out with people, the more energized they get. That's not really me. I definitely have like a battery throughout the day
mm.
that decreases.
I see.
Uh, but yeah, that's me.
So then, like, when you talk about like sports being your stuff, like, do you remember like the time when like this actually even became the thing? Was there a time when sport wasn't, and then like you came into sport, or just from the time you could remember, it was just like I love this sport and I just wanted to play them.
Um, I think it was pretty much like always there. I was yeah, for as long as I remember, like even like first and second grade, it was just like the thing. Like you would just go to recess and you'd go play soccer. And then for like a while later when LeBron James became amazing, then like we switched over and people would play basketball instead. And then when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, then it was like football and everybody played
Ah,
football. So it was just like the thing that you did for fun. I do remember I like maybe middle school onwards, I was a huge like just Xbox guy. Like there's like every game under the planet I think I played growing up, and it was just like the same friends that I'd play basketball with would also play random Xbox games. So like we would play stuff throughout the day, and then we'd go home and play games at night. So
interesting.
that I do remember. It was like a before and after. Like there was a time when I didn't play that much Xbox, and then I
Mhm.
think it was like my dad worked at Microsoft, so they gave everyone a Xbox 360 when it came out. Like all the employees got one, so I just ended up getting into it that way.
Ah, I
Um,
see.
but it was like the same friend group. It was like whatever the friends played, then I would just like go play with them.
Interesting. So, like, one of the things you actually mentioned, which was like, I think you said your elementary school, I think you went to like three schools, middle school, maybe two different schools. For parents that are sort of like moving around and like wondering, how will my child cope as we move from like place to place? It's like coming to America and trying to sort of settle. Like, we've not got into like the advice part, but what sort of stuff helped you cope with all of that? Like, just thinking back about it now, what made you like cope and just felt like, oh, this is just normal?
Yeah, that's okay. That's a pretty good question. I think having like a group of friends is very important, and when you're
Mm,
moving around so much, it's not natural to like go out and just make new friends like that. And I think what really helped me is that even though we were moving schools a lot, we mostly went to the same like mosque classes, and
mm,
there I had the same consistent group of friends, and those group of friends are still my friends until like today, pretty much. And so even though I was moving schools around and I was like making new friends at each school, even though it was a little bit awkward, I still had like another friend group that I was like pretty consistent with. So I never felt that like, oh, I don't have friends. I have to go make friends now at
yeah.
this new place. But I would say that's the number one challenge. So if it's like advice for parents, it's like you have to make sure that that exists. Like if they don't have friends, that's like a problem that you need to fix. So yeah, but you kind of get used to it. I remember when we moved, like it was like eighth grade, and then going to high school, we moved in that summer between middle school and high school. That one I do really remember having to like go out of my way to like purposely sit at certain lunch tables so I can meet new people or something like that. But it's like you have to acknowledge that that is important and then be really purposeful that you have to go make friends. It's not just going to happen by itself. You have to go make friends. And the same applies today when like moving between cities and things like that. You have to be really purposeful about meeting new people.
I see. So then talk to me about how this kid who loves sport moves into playing Xbox. What was the tech story about? How did the tech part of all of this start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember it was for me personally at least we around like ninth grade I'd say like freshman or sophomore year of high school. Um, the story with us is that, like I told you, my mom and a bunch of other moms had been like organizing these like Quran classes for like 10 years or something, and me and my group of like guy friends, at least, we got to an age at some point where like the moms just couldn't like control us. It was just like we were like older. It's like teenagers. We just like it's very hard to have a bunch of moms try to like sit us down and like teach us like about Islamic studies or something. We were just like too hyper and like too much energy. So what ended up happening is that one of our friends' dads, so Yassine Yaqubi's dad, which is Ahmad Yaqubi, he kind of he worked at Microsoft. I think he still works there until now, and he kind of transitioned us from these like Quran and Islamic studies classes to like, hey, let me teach you guys how to be like productive and like work on like projects that matter to people. And that was our introduction into both tech and startups. And at the time, I didn't actually know anything about like coding or like designing anything. This was like pre ChatGPT, so you had to like actually learn how to code a website or an app or something. Um, and what I really distinctly remember is that some of the other people in that group already knew that stuff. Like they had been like working on, I think it was like Lego Mindstorms earlier, or some of them were involved in robotics or something. So like they were kind of they already knew that type of stuff. So I went in like a very like novice, like not educated person about this stuff. But having like that background in sports, it was like that like really annoyed me. I remember like that was just not a fun feeling to like have everyone else know about stuff, but I didn't know about that same stuff. And I hadn't taken like any computer science classes or anything. So when Amolia started trying to get us to build like a project together, it was like a Quran app at the time. I felt very like useless for the most part, and what ended up happening is I took a lot of like these like Code Academy courses to just like learn the basics, because I knew what I had to learn, but I just like didn't know it. Um, so I remember it was like I think it was the entire summer of freshman year in high school. And during the year, I would just like wake up early and just like crank through like an hour of Code Academy, just like every single day. And I remember I took like very sequential courses. It was like HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript, then Java, and I followed a bunch of YouTube videos to like build side projects. I had built like personal finance tracker, or like a just calculator app or something, like the basic stuff like that. And within like 3 months, I think I was just like very proficient in all of that stuff, and I definitely felt like it was my thing. And when we resumed like the sessions that we had with Amorias to like learn how to project manage or like release an app or something, I felt like the opposite of useless now. Like I could actually like contribute to the project with the other guys. So that was kind of the start of it, and I just like pretty much instantly knew like this was my thing. Like I was born to do this, and I was very like happy that I was technical. And then when I ended up taking like other computer science classes like in high school and stuff, it would just be like a breeze for me, while sometimes hard for other people. So I just knew I liked it. Like it was just something that I really enjoyed doing, and that's when sports kind of also phased out, I would say. When once I started thinking about that stuff. So yeah, long story short, it was Amories's contributions, I would say, that took me in.
Wow. That's an interesting story actually, because I think most people, when they look at like founders, it's usually this like you have like your 10,000 hours even before like you get even to high school,
Yeah,
but you
yeah, I
say
was not like that.
and interesting. So sort of then like if you sort of think through this, like how did the sports part play a role into making just like I want to wake up 1 hour every day? So you're this teen who is like super energetic on this stuff, but then you get something else and you're like, I want to wake up early, I want to do this. Like, what about all of that made you wanted to do it? Like, what were the feelings? How were you feeling like? How were the other guys doing it? Just
Yeah,
how was that period like for you? The period before you even got like good. What were the
yeah,
feelings like?
yeah. I think part of it is like I growing up, like I definitely had a feeling that I wanted to be good at stuff, like at the thing. So like if I saw someone else that did the thing, like was good at math, like they'd like get good grades in math, or they knew how to code, or they were like way better than me at soccer or something. There's like there's something that like bothered me about that. I'm like, oh, like if another human being can do it, like I'm also a human being, so I should be able to do that. And I think especially now with like the AI wave stuff, um, like knowing that your brain can learn stuff if you just like put the time is like a very good acknowledgement like that you need to have. So when you see someone else that's like really good at soccer, or they knew how to make an app already when we were making apps, you can kind of sit and just say like, well, like the other person, they just know, or they have 10,000 hours, like there's no way I can get to 10,000 hours or something like that. The other approach is to just like sit down and do the work, to learn the thing. And that was it for me. Like growing up, if someone was like way better than me at soccer or way better than me at basketball, I would just sit and be like, okay, like I just have to do 100 free throws a day. Like that's just what it's going to take. Or I just, I have to practice more than that. Like that's just not what it's going to take. And it was kind of the same thing for CS. Like I remember not doubting that I could do it, but I was just like annoyed that I like haven't done it already, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the waking up like early and just like doing the hour a day of Code Academy was just my way of like catching up, essentially. Like I knew I was kind of behind. Other people clearly knew how to do this. I had like acknowledged that this is clearly an important skill to have. So how do I get there? And with enough Googling, you just realize, oh, it's like you just have to watch a bunch of YouTube, or you have to take these online courses until you get there. And it wasn't even that hard, I would say. Like I just remember the hard part being the research phase of like how do I get good at the thing, but very quickly you just realize that other people have gone through this. So there's like online, like Code Academy was huge for me. It was just like very easy to follow. I just had to do like my 1 or 2 lessons a day. But it took a couple months, but by the end of it, like it was just very like simple to be proficient. Um, so yeah, I think like acknowledging that your brain can learn, especially at like our young ages,
Mm-hmm.
is like a very helpful reminder.
Normally, when we do this podcast, we do like advice at the end, but I feel like a lot of what you're saying has like bunch of stuff we can pivot into advice even as we go. So I
I
let's
can
talk
hold, I
to
can hold off.
yeah. So like sort of if you were to go back to this period when you're like Code Academy and all of that, but now this is like the period of AI, and you're
Mhm.
talking to like an eighth grader, ninth grader, or if you were to go back into like starting now with like all
Mhm.
of what AI was like is like now, how would you approach this same period of like I'm seeing people doing all of these things and I want to do it again? How would you advise a middle grader to approach it? And how are you approaching sort of all of like the AI stuff in what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I actually have pretty strong opinions on this. The 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 con of AI right now, I think, like with all like Claude Code, ChatGPT, all this kind of stuff, is that it can do the job like first try, like or it's gonna get there if it isn't yet. So like if you really want to build something these days, especially when talking about code, you can like almost one shot anything these days that you have in mind. Like just tell ChatGPT and it'll do it, or even in non-technical things, like if you're in that teenager age, it's very easy to just give your homework assignment to ChatGPT as like a file, and it'll just tell you the answers and it'll explain it to you and everything. That's the con of it, is that it reduces like learning essentially, because you won't know how it got there. But the pro of it is you don't really have to have these like courses that you have to enroll in anymore, or you don't have to like actively do the research that I told you about to figure out how to learn the thing. Like ChatGPT can teach you a lot of this stuff. For example, recently I was working on a hardware project on the side, and I've never done anything hardware related before. Like semi control microcontrollers and firmware code and like C++. Like it was just like all foreign stuff to me. I had friends that were good at it, but I just had never done that before. And I very quickly got a project working with like it was Cursor, what I was using at the time, and it was like very easy to just tell Cursor what I wanted, and it would just write the code, and I was done. But very quickly, I found myself like generating code that I didn't understand at all, which really annoyed me. I was like, if it breaks or if something's wrong, I can't. I feel like a disabled like person here. Like I can't actually arm myself to go fix it. So what I ended up doing is just like going through each code file that it generated and asking Cursor to just like explain it to me. Like tell me like what is this function doing? What is this like lines 10 through 20? What is that doing? And normally I would have used Code Academy or YouTube or something, but now it's much easier because I can just give the context directly to the chatbot and it'll just like explain to me what I need to know. So I think for like younger people, the issue here is like ChatGPT came out in like 2022, right? And me and you were around way before then, and we have like a base knowledge, right? Like, let's say we started doing tech stuff in like 2017, I think it was for me or so. So from 2017 to 2022, I built up this like base knowledge, right? Like I kind of knew how like things worked. So now when ChatGPT comes out in 2022 to 2026, I'm like using my base knowledge and combining it with ChatGPT, but there's no new knowledge, like because ChatGPT is just doing everything or Claude is doing everything. The problem now is that if you are somebody that's in like high school or middle school right now, you don't have like a base knowledge. Like everything that you know has been 2022 and onwards. So you're just using ChatGPT like for everything. And I think that's a problem. So I think like what people now need to do is like go out of their way to use the AI to teach it. Like you need to learn from it. You have an easier path than Code Academy or YouTube, but it can also be used as like a cheating code. You can skip a bunch of lessons. But if you want to be like productive to society, or at least like ahead of the curve of most people, you have to use it to like have it teach you the thing, so that when you're having discussions with real people in the real world and you don't have ChatGPT on your side, you can still like contribute meaningfully. You can generate new ideas. You can have original thoughts. So I don't know what the next few years look like, but I gotta say I definitely am worried for people, especially in tech, that are starting like now, because it feels much harder to know the new knowledge, and it's easier to just cheat your way to to getting things working.
Mm.
So yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, I hope that makes sense.
That's super interesting, man. I love that. I'll come back at the end, sort of like what we're also trying to do around that. But yeah, so then talk me through. Now you started a Moya Sin's program and you're building this calculator, this personal finance. How did that process evolve? How did that go?
Yeah. So what we were building is because we had kind of all gone to the same like Quran classes basically growing up. We wanted to build a like a Quran class management app basically, and we were just going to give it to some of the teachers that we knew at the local masjids, and it went pretty well. I'd say that even though I think we got a couple teachers to actually use it, but it was definitely not this like mega success or anything. But the real value from it is that we all learned a lot about how to build things from scratch, which is it sounds easy, but it's like a very important and hard to learn lesson. Like, how do you work with a team that we only have an idea, we don't have anything like physical to touch or like anything, we just have this like theory. How do you take that theory and make it like something that other people can see, like an app that they can use, or like a video they can see or something? And it took a lot of work to get there. There was a lot of arguing of ideas and a lot of tasks being assigned, and eventually we got an app like out there that was in the app store and everything. It was called the Quran Connect is what we called it. And I remember we gathered a bunch of teachers like in a room and presented like our work to them, and that was the first time that I realized how important talking to like the end user is, because a lot of the things that we had built was just like wrong. And they told us like, oh, like this is not how I actually teach my class, it's like this way, and the questions that they asked informed other future things that we would build. So there was like some lessons there that I just learned, like talk to your users, build things fast, iterate, release something fast. Very like critical startup lessons that don't come naturally. Um, and so eventually, I think it was like right around when COVID hit. So that's when things kind of like fizzled out a little bit and everybody was working on their own things. But we did get something out. I think a couple teachers were using it for a little bit. But then college applications came around, and like all that kind of stuff. So we all went separate directions. But from there, I knew this was kind of what I wanted to do, like startup stuff, build things on the side. Yeah, I just continued doing that pretty much from that project.
Hmm. Okay, then talk to me a bit more then. So college applications come in, you decided to go to UW. How was that process like? How was UW? How was all of that? What were you still building while still doing like UW?
Yeah. So right after Quran Connect, actually, me and one other person that was working with me on the Quran thing, we started kind of like a next company or next project. We called it Help, and essentially what it was doing was connecting like local services with people that needed them. So it was very like everybody was doing that idea at the time. I think we worked with like a cleaning company. There was like some plumbers and things like that, and this was before like TaskRabbit or any of that stuff. And once again, like we never really got a huge like product off the ground, but I learned a lot of things from that experience. First of all, it was during COVID, so having remote people was very hard when you're building something new. And the other part was I ended up recruiting maybe like I think it was like 12 people total or something to work on that. So like quite a large team. And you learn a lot from working with quite a large team about how to work with differing skill sets and project manage and things like that. And for that one, same thing. We got a project off the ground. It was like, it was an app that was out there that we got one cleaning business to use it, and they fulfilled a few orders, which was fun. Um, but that one quickly also kind of fizzled out as college really came around. Because what we ended up doing is for Quran Connect, I think it was like sophomore year to junior year, and then Help was like junior year and senior year ish, and then like as we all just kind of got into different colleges, that's when things kind of like we were like, okay, like we learned a lot from this experience. Let's kind of move on. And for college itself, I had applied to a bunch of colleges, not realizing that like Arab Muslim background parents prefer that you stay in state. So that was quite the conversation. I ended up so I didn't get into the University of Washington in Seattle. I think I got in, but not into the CS major. I think it was like something like that. But I got into UC Berkeley somehow versus, I'm not sure how that correlates. And then a couple of other like backup colleges and UW Bothell over here for like straight into the CS major. I was a Running Start student, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I was at Bellevue College for a little bit. So we were just applying straight into our majors because we had a lot of credits built up. Um, but so that decision for me was just like, do I go out of state for UC Berkeley? Do I completely change my major at UW Seattle, or do I just stick to computer science and do it at UW Bothell? And a very close friend of mine had kind of already committed to UW Bothell. He wasn't going to go out of state, and in my head, I was like, school is like, I know I'm not going to be like the PhD like student. I know I like building projects and things like that. So for me, it was more about like getting college over with, so I satisfy that requirement. And I didn't, UC Berkeley was like extremely expensive. I think their tuition was $60K a year or something like that,
Oh.
because it's out of state and California and things like that. So to also just make it way easier on parents, I ended up sticking in state in UW Bothell, and studied computer science there. And I graduated in like 5 quarters, so it was definitely a speed run of
Wow.
college.
Interesting. Five
Yeah,
quarters, that's like 2 years or under 2 years?
it's less than 2 years. Yeah, because I came in with a lot of credits from Running Start, and I had done a bunch of AP classes. And what I ended up doing is the reason it was 5 quarters is because during like there was fall quarter, winter, spring. During the first winter quarter, I did an internship at a company called Verkada in the Bay Area in a city called San Mateo, and that counted towards like college credit as well, but I wasn't like actually there doing anything. And then there was a couple other quarters where I just did like 4 classes just to kind of
Get
get
it
it.
out of the way.
Essentially, yeah. For me, it was definitely like, let's just get this done mentality, which in hindsight, I kind of regret that. I feel like I should have enjoyed it a little bit more, having been out of college for a few years now. But I had fun. I met a lot of great people. And yeah, UW Bothell, when you actually end up going, you get the same access to like UW Seattle events as well. So I made friends at UW Bothell, and I was going to the UW Seattle social stuff like MSAs and things like that. So I got to just meet everybody across the board.
Wow. So tell me about your time in college then, because then you were doing like a lot of these courses, you were doing Running Start. So even start from Running Start. How was Running Start for you then? Because I would guess you were doing like a lot of credits. And then I was that with like college, and then you were still doing all of this side project.
Yeah, yeah. So during Running Start, most of it was during COVID for us. COVID hit us, I think, like the second quarter of Bellevue College. It was like that March or something. So it was during the winter quarter. So we went fully remote for like the year and a half, basically. And so I knew I wanted to study computer science, like just from working on, at that time, I was still working on like the help stuff and all that. So I was. I was pretty much like optimizing towards a computer science degree at the University of Washington. So I would just like look at their course requirements and look at Bellevue College, and I would just
Mm,
know exactly what I needed to study, what classes I needed to sign up for, including electives and things like that. So that's how I graduated quickly, because I just went in having the perfect set of credits for computer science, basically. So that was Running Start, and yeah, during COVID, it was just like. Um, there was yeah Me and my friends would just like study together online on like Discord and things like that back then. And there was a lot of gaming happening during that phase of life. I think we would like do our classes and things in the mornings and homework and things like that, and then it was like Call of Duty at the time. We would just like get on Call of Duty at nights, basically. And it was the same set of friends that I had worked with on like Put
mm,
and all that kind of stuff. So
mhm.
it's a very consistent like memory for us, is that we worked together, we gamed together, we did a lot of that stuff. During COVID, there wasn't a lot of like building happening, I'd say. What I did get into actually during that period was a bunch of social media stuff. Basically, we had made money through refing soccer games before COVID, but once COVID came in, it was like we need another way to like have money, basically, to just like buy clothes and food and stuff. And during that time, because I was super into computer science, I made a lot of these like TikToks just telling people about like how to learn to code and like, how to get an internship, or, things that I hadn't even really done before, but I was just like talking about it. And pretty quickly, I was able to build up like, I think I had gotten to like 60,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram. And what ended up happening during that time is a couple of like coding boot camps, if you remember those.
Mhm.
They had like reached out to me to like make content for them. So
Mm.
I was kind of working as this like freelance content creator thing for a little bit. That was like most of my senior year, I'd say. And that was really fun, actually, because I got to meet like a completely different type of people, like how do content creators think, and I got to meet like other content creators that were also super famous, way more famous than I was. So meeting those type of people just on a Zoom call was really cool. But that was a good like year and a half for me, where I would just make these kind of like, oh, like this is what JavaScript is type of video. And Yeah, it was fun for a little bit. That's how I kind of spent my Running Start years.
Wow. Interesting. So you've started with the Quran Connect, you've done help, you've done content creation, you finished your 5 quarters, you've done the Running Start, now you finish your UW Bottle program. Talk to us then. What was the next flow after all of this?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that during college I did a couple things. So there
Okay.
was
Go.
that my first quarter at college, I was basically just applying to like software engineering internships. I knew, since I wanted to graduate in 2 years, like I had to get something basically so I can work after college. And even though I was into the startup thing, like I just had to save up initial money at least, right, to help my parents out even and things like that. And so my entire like first quarter was just like spamming applications, getting referrals, going to all the career fairs and things like that. And that's when I ended up getting that first internship at Verkada. They made like cloud security cameras basically, and it was a very fun job because they were a startup themselves. So the company was, I think, like 200 software engineers, or so. It's not like huge company, and I got to meet some of the best people that I've worked with at that company. They were very talented, and everything was very mission driven about the company because it was security systems. They could brag about how we're like saving lives, like we're catching bad guys, and they would sometimes bring in police officers to like talk about how much of an impact our company was having. And I worked on like the alarms team, so things that were used at like banks and stuff like that. Like I would be writing code there. Um, that was the first time I really learned how to be like an actual software engineer, not like a side project engineer. And I met a lot of great people that I still keep in touch with today through that internship. And it was just 3 months. I lived in the Bay Area for a little bit. I got to kind of know the Bay a little bit more. And when I came back, what ended up happening is that I also had another internship lined up at a company called Okta. That was in the summer, and that was the company that I was most likely going to go to because my parents wanted me to stay nearby and not go to the Bay Area, and that was a remote company, so I can kind of like live at home while doing that. So I knew I basically had like 6 months to just do something in college beyond classes. And what ended up happening is I, along with a couple of other people, started something called Course Finder at UW. A lot of people from that time may remember this website, but it was basically just a website where you could search up courses and their teachers, and you can see like the average GPA of that course, like the average grades, like how many, what does this teacher usually grade, and things like that. And it was very useful because at that time it was there's something called Dogpath that UW later released, but this was like the first version of Dogpath. And it went viral very quick because we ended up posting it a bunch on like the UW subreddit, and I think we had like thousands of like upvotes like pretty quickly. And just from like our internal data, I think each quarter we had like 10,000 students using it out of UW's. I think it was like 45,000 total. This is including
Wow.
Seattle. So there was quite a bit of people that were using it, and it was fun because during that time I would tell people on campus that like I built this thing, and they would like instantly know it. So I felt very like famous celebrity. um, so that was really fun. And that idea came from earlier, actually, when I was thinking about going to Berkeley. That's what I mentioned a little bit ago. When I was thinking about it, I attended a couple of their like informational sessions, and they had a website like that students had built. So when I like actually ended up going to UW, it was very obvious that like this is not here, so let's like try to build this. And all the data is publicly accessible. It's like a legal thing that you could just request from the colleges. So just request the data, build the platform, and put it on a website, and everybody was using it. So that was really fun. But I learned a very important lesson, which is you need to make money as a company to survive, because it's very expensive to run websites with that many visitors, actually. And it turns out students are not very good advertising potential. So you can't just like put advertising on a website and make money, because the advertiser has to be able to sell to this person. And students are notoriously known for not having that much money. So they're very bad advertising like potential. They just don't spend that much money. So we found it pretty difficult to make money. Dogpath came out, and we were just like, okay, I think like this was fun. It was like something we put on our resume, but it's time to wind it down. And I had just started at Okta as well, so I kind of wanted to focus on that for the internship. So yeah, I ended up working at Okta for a little bit. There's nothing remarkable about that. It was just a typical software engineering role. They gave me a return offer. I went to them the following year. And yeah, throughout the second year of college, I was mostly just having fun. Like that was just like I was just going to all the events I could at college, knowing that I was about to graduate. And there was, yeah, I think I took like a break year from building stuff a little bit that year. So yeah.
Interesting. So sort of like what were like some of your memories of when you wanted to like close down like the cost finder stuff, like how much were you actually even like running into, if you like remember the like cost and all of that?
Yeah, it was actually pretty a pretty painful kind of thing because it was like we liked it a lot, and I was working with a friend of mine who's still one of my closest friends to this day, and we like there was just like no way to make money from it, and I remember we were like running on like AWS credits for a little bit, but then those started to phase out because after like a year they start to expire, and it was costing us maybe like I think like $500 a month, but which is not that much money, like just on a dollar value. But like we didn't have money, so that was a very like considering cost, and we also just didn't we weren't making money from the platform. And I think when Dogpath kind of started coming out, we were like, okay, like this is clearly going to be a better run website if you are the university and you have access to more data than we do. So yeah, it was a very painful decision, but we were like, we just thought the thing had run its course and it was like good on our resume. But yeah, that like it just made sense to not pay that huge amount of money to keep it alive.
I see. Wow. So then you've done all of this, you've done the cost finder, you've gone to Okta, you've done the internship, you've got the return. What happens now you've graduated, you have a return?
Yeah.
Sorry, before you mention that, is there any more stories in college?
No, I think that's all the relevant stories in college. Yeah, I went to Okta pretty much almost like after I graduated immediately. I graduated in June and I started like end of July, I think, or something. And for the first like maybe 3 months, I was like really dedicated to the company. I was like, this makes sense. Like, start my career the right way, and the startup stuff I can like do it later, basically. After 3 months, I got really bored, and there was not a lot of. It was a remote company, so I wasn't really meeting that many people. Sometimes I just went to the office, but it was completely empty. So it wasn't a very fun company. Also, it was there's just like nobody my age. Like everybody that worked there was like family oriented, like people with kids, and it was just like very hard to kind of meet people that were at all relevant to what I was thinking about. Um, and I had a couple other friends that were kind of in a similar position as me. I had met them through earlier projects and things like that. And one of them worked at Zoom for a little bit, and the other one had also interned at a bunch of places, but wasn't really sure what he was going to do next. And we were like, it kind of might make sense to like do something on the side and try another startup thing. Like maybe we could leave our jobs if it starts working. And what we ended up working on was something called Platter. And basically, what that was kind of like a Shopify for restaurants. And the way that that started is a friend of mine, Ayub Barak, who you know, his family owns a restaurant at Maps, Johada Cafe, which is very popular on Fridays, especially. And they wanted to like make a website and an app and have like loyalty points and things like that. So I ended up just like pitching that to the other two guys. I was like, hey, like I have this friend, we could like try this idea. Like he told me he wants it. Let's just try it for him and then see what we could do for other restaurants. And after a little bit of iteration and like building things back and forth, like very quickly we got a lot of restaurants actually to sign up. We built the thing and then just started cold calling like every restaurant that didn't have a website in Washington, basically. And it was very like straightforward process. We would basically just build like a Google scraper to get us all the restaurants that didn't have websites. And each of us would spend like maybe 2 hours a day between lunch and dinner, which is usually when they're free. And you would just call them and be like, hey, can I speak to the owner? Hey, my name is so and so. We have a small company that helps restaurants build websites and mobile apps. Can I come show it to you? And we would drive to them with like an iPad and we would show them like, oh, this is like what the customer would see and this is how they place an order and this is what you would see and this is how you accept the order. And they were very like willing to try these things because it was the same way that DoorDash and Uber Eats kind of worked, but without the fees, basically. Like DoorDash just took like 30% of whatever a restaurant would take. um,
Hmm.
that's why restaurant prices are usually higher on DoorDash and Uber Eats.
Oh.
these fees. So they wanted like their own brand, and like they didn't want to operate with these fees. So it totally made sense to kind of go with us. And it wasn't like a completely easy sell to everybody, but it was like good enough for us to generate good amounts of revenue. Um, so that one was like a culmination of a lot of learnings I had. Like you have to make money, you got to build quickly, you got to work with the right people, and pretty quickly we got enough revenue to like get our own office, leave our jobs. We had like 60 restaurants, I think, around that point. And that was very fun. It was over the course of maybe like a year and a half. So for like the first like 8 months, I continued working at Okta, and my friend still worked at Zoom. But then after like around the 8 month period, we were like, oh, okay, like this is doing well enough where we could leave our jobs, do it full time. And we did it for another maybe like 7 or 8 months. And it's still running till today, like very full time. We're just not like full time working on it. It's like a kind of in the background, like restaurants just receive orders, and we make money from it. But we ended up kind of switching to something else because our big learning from that was this is a good idea, but it's not like the venture scale, like $1 billion potential idea. And we all kind of knew that we wanted to build something like really big, not like a lifestyle kind of company. So we spent some time fully automating it, and that's when like the YC stuff happened, which I can get into next.
Wow. So even before we get into the YC thing, so talk to me more about even when you were pitching the clients, the ones that didn't say yes. Like, talk to me about some of those because
Yeah, quite a lot. I think it's very important to say
yeah,
our cold calling. Maybe let's just play some numbers out. We would scrape like 100 restaurants. We'd cold call all of them. We would maybe get demos with like 10 of them. Like if we were good, most of them just would hang up the phone or no, I'm not interested, or we'd have to call multiple times to get the owner on the line. They're like, oh, call back at 2, like that's when they're here, stuff like that. And then when we finally got the demos with the 10, usually how they'd go is like we'd pitch them the thing, we'd show it to them, and they would be like, oh, okay, like I have to talk to my wife, or like I'll think about it, like get back to me soon. There's very rare amount of times where they just wanted it right there on the spot. We usually had to do a lot of following up to get them to do it. And we really built like a sales system around it. Like we had like a Google sheet where like we would track all of this stuff and go through it like almost every day to be like, okay, have we called back this person? Have we followed up on this demo? And there's so many restaurants where I remember one in particular that it was like a food truck kind of place. And I went to them, I pitched them, and they raised a bunch of concerns. They're like, oh, like it's too expensive. I don't want to raise my prices on my customers or whatever to just for your fees. So then I'd like go away and come back a few days later, and I'd be like, oh, like, are you sure? Like, don't you want it? And I think I went to this place like 4 times before I just gave up. Like, I was just like, okay, like they're just not going to buy it. My time is better spent trying to get a new customer instead. So getting those 60 restaurants, it was across like a year, like it was a very long time to get up to that number of restaurants. And that's kind of why we realized like it's a good business, and we could probably travel to all states in the US and like do the same thing and maybe build a business that's worth a couple $1 million. But it's like, this is not the company that like scales. This is not the company that you raise a lot of money for and you get billions in revenue. Like it's just never going to get there, even if everything goes perfectly. So that was a big learning lesson, is like like even though you can work really hard, choosing what to work on is like more important than just grinding it out. So honestly, like if that's the company that you want to build, there's a lot of types of companies like that where you could just like cold call small businesses and sell them something small. And if that's what you want to do, you're going to make a lot of money from it. But if you kind of want to do something else, then that's just not going to work.
interesting. So then talk to me a little then about, so it's two questions in one. Who was your first customer, first approved, the first day you guys jumped up? It's like, okay, this was our first customer. And then talk to me about how this mindset about like we wanted to build something really big came about. So those two questions.
Say the second one more time.
This idea of we want to build something like really big, like $1 billion business
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
of that. Yes.
Yeah. So the first those technically two customers that kind of came at the same time. The one of them was that Johara Cafe one that my friend had owned. He was very willing to just try it, like even though things were not working that great. And the other one was it was a restaurant called Cloud Food Court. I don't know if you remember it. It closed down now, but it was in Kirkland. It was owned by another Egyptian guy, so it was very easy to approach him. And I remember when we went live. Basically, Johara Cafe, for those who don't know, is it's like inside of a mosque, so it gets really busy on Fridays. Like after Friday prayer, a lot of people stand in line waiting for their chicken biryani or something. And so what we ended up doing is I set it up like for him. I set up a website, I set up a mobile app, and everything like that. And then we put up these like posters with QR codes next to the restaurant to try to like get people to order. And I remember I think we gave like a 10% discount on like first orders, and we just paid for that ourselves as the
Hmm.
company just to get people on. Because our hypothesis is like once you learn that you don't have to stand in line once, like why would you ever stand in line after that? So when we did that, I remember going there that first day that they were live, the first Friday, and just like yelling at people online, being like, "Hey, like you don't have to stand in line. You could just like order through this app, order through this website." And a lot of people did. Like a lot of people made it like a pretty consistent habit to order from the Johara Cafe like app. Um, they would also earn points. So like if they come multiple times, you can get like $1 off, every time or something like that. So yeah, it was, I really remember that. And we ended up doing some like similar tactics for all restaurants. Like every restaurant we onboarded, we would set up posters for them and, print out stickers and do like a discount for the first month or something. And it became pretty predictable how we go from like restaurant to money generating restaurant
Yeah.
and like getting customers to actually use it. So you only do that stuff by like sticking with it for a really long time. It took us like months to actually get to that point, like trying different ideas that failed, and we would finally try something that worked. Um, as for your second question, oh yeah, building something big. Yeah, I think us three specifically, we always wanted to do that. Like we always had read like the stories of like Airbnb and Stripe and DoorDash and these companies. So even when we were working on the restaurant thing, we wanted to build something big. We just didn't like acknowledge like we didn't like admit to ourselves that this is probably not going to be the big thing. But that came from just reading stories of like other companies, and like we would watch, like the Uber show or like the how we work became a decently sized company before going through their stuff. And it's like we always wanted to build something like very big that a lot of people used. And we got excited whenever we had like a Slack channel where every time someone placed an order on one of our apps, we would get notified. So we were getting like hundreds of these notifications a day, and it was like pretty exciting to see that. But it took us a while to really admit, and also we heard it from the YC folks when we talked to them, that like this idea is not going to be big because we cannot sell to that many restaurants. We're selling to like the worst restaurants, the ones that don't already have websites. And we eventually figured out that, oh, like this isn't going to be the big thing, so let's like stop wasting our time and like search for the big thing. And we're still doing that, to be fair. Like that's still the searching. But the big learning is like there's actually like a lot of ways to build these like small businesses that could make some amount of money.
Mhm.
uh, but it's like, do you want to do that, or do you want to go after like the moonshot ideas? And it takes a while to figure out what to work on.
Mm. It's actually interesting. So now I wanted to go on your path to like moonshot. So we've got into platter, say it's Earthshot, and we shot that and we're fine. What was the next path now? How was your moonshot path been since then?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's still going, honestly. So what ended up happening with Platter is that we had applied to YC like multiple times. We knew about them already and watched a bunch of their videos and things like that online. So we really respected those guys, and we kept applying, and we did a couple interviews with them. The way it works is you apply, you have like a 1 in I think like 50 chance or something of getting an interview. The interview is like 10 minutes where they just like bombard you with questions, and then you have like another 1 in 50 chance or something of getting into the actual thing. So Getting an interview is not hard if you have traction. Like they'll usually give you an interview if you have something. So we got interviews. Like we were like, oh, we have this restaurant business thing. We have like, a couple $1,000s in revenue, 60 restaurants. Like it's good. And they gave us a couple interviews, and pretty much like the first one we did, they just told us like this is not a good idea. Like, do you have other ideas? And we were like, no, like we want to work on this. And then the second interview came, and they also told us it was a bad idea. But by that time, we were like, okay, like maybe you're right. It was like 6 months later, so we kind of realized like maybe they were right. And basically, that YC interview, they told us like, look, you guys are like pretty smart people, and it's cool that you have gone full time on this. Like, you're clearly committed to this kind of journey. Um, so why don't you come into YC with like a new idea? Just like do something else. Don't do this, but like we'll fund you, like we'll do all this stuff, but you cannot work on this restaurant idea. And so we were like, okay, like that's fine. We'll do that. So we spent a few weeks like completely automating the restaurant thing. We didn't shut it down. We just wanted it to like work on its own. And we ended up, that was about the time when like the word agent was kind of becoming like a thing. And we were one of the really early people that were working on browser agents. So if you remember, like OpenAI released Operator for a little bit,
Yes.
that was like
Yes.
we were kind of in that space and trying to figure out like we again we wanted to do the moonshot ideas, and we were like we have to sell to better customers, like people who are willing to pay way more, they're more accessible, they have cash sitting around. And so we thought like selling this browser agent stuff to like enterprises is a good idea. Like they have more money, they have a lot of tasks that they outsource. There's probably something there. And so we spent pretty much all of YC trying to do that. Like we built this like browser agent platform where you can build like automations in the cloud, and we would try to sell it to these like huge enterprises, like pretty big, like 1,000-person companies basically that had outsourced a bunch of tasks. Usually they outsource them to like the Philippines or something like that, and usually it's tasks like, oh, I got an email from a vendor with a spreadsheet. I need to take the spreadsheet, read it, and then enter it into this like tax software. And it's not really automatable, so they needed someone else to do it. But the theory was like these agents should be able to do those tasks. They should be able to just like use the computer and just do it. Um, I would say that we were very early. Like the agents could definitely not do those tasks. We got a lot of inbound with those ideas though. Like we would just put up a website and people would book demos. Like people were really wanting this stuff. So clearly like we had solved the demand equation, but we just like couldn't actually fulfill any of them because the agents were not good enough. So we spent like January to June, I would say, doing that. And at some point, we just ran into all sorts of issues. Like because we were doing everything manually, because it didn't work, we couldn't handle more than like 10 customers. So between the three of us, and that was not a fun period either, because by the end of it, we just kind of like knew this wasn't going to work. Like something was wrong. We were either too early, or we like we're not the right founders, or like there's something like wrong here. The good news is we had used that idea to like fundraise, so we raised a couple $1 million to just like keep going for a while. Investors in Silicon Valley, I learned to just kind of give out money. It's like if you just have an idea and you like your entire mission is to fundraise, like people will genuinely just give you money. So that was a big learning. But again, the same issue kind of came up. Like knowing exactly what to work on was like there was a bunch of like stars that have to align for the idea. And so we decided to pivot again. We were just like, this is not really going to work. And the customers were not going to get satisfied, and we started like hating the space. Like we were just like, this is like very painful, like nothing is working. I feel like we had better traction with the restaurant thing. um, so we decided to pivot again, and for the next maybe like 3 months we were just like searching for ideas. So like yeah, June through maybe September or something, we were kind of like just waddling. Like we never really had like strong progress on anything, and we were just like spitballing ideas. Which is not a great way of coming up with ideas, I'll say. Like it's very hard to sit in a room and come up with like the next Uber or something. But what we ended up uh, doing is we got advice to start shadowing people like in the real world and learn about their problems. Basically, the theory is like if you're 23 years old, you just don't know that much about the world, so it's hard to come up with ideas. And that was pretty good advice. I spent time at a fishery, for example, like a commercial fishing business. Learned all about how they operate. We spent time with banks. We drove to like almost every bank in San Francisco and just asked them to talk to us. What else did we do? We spent time with dermatologists. Obviously, that's kind of like our latest endeavor. And the big learning from that is like there's actually like quite a lot of problems in the world to be solved if you just step away from technology a little bit. People's lives are not perfect. Everybody has problems, and getting out of your room and just talking to those people, you'll find that people are usually friendly and can just tell you about their problems. So I've been talking for a while. Do you want to jump in?
No, no, no. I love this. I love like the part to moonshot you're going. Just go on.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when we landed in dermatology, we got there because basically the advice was to find people that are in your network that worked at like random jobs that you didn't know about. So the fishing thing was like, of my co-founder's friend's parent was like a commercial fishing business. They like caught crab in Port Angeles. The bank thing was because my other co-founder's mom worked at like a bank. She was like at Wells Fargo or something. So, she was like, "Oh, like come, I'll teach you about how like the banking system works." The dermatology thing was because our investor was a dermatologist, or one of our investors, and he was both like a dermatologist and he had started a company in like med tech basically. So he just told us like, if you guys are searching for things, like I have a lot of friends that are dermatologists, so you can just come watch how we do stuff, and maybe you'll get some ideas. And we quickly saw that like there is like a potential path to moonshot here because these are very rich customers. They make a lot of money on just like a practice level, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And there's a lot of problems in just healthcare. Like anybody in healthcare will tell you that. So a lot of problems to be solved. Rich customer. If we could somehow figure out the weeds of it, like there's clearly a path to a potentially multiple billion-dollar idea. Um, so we for the next few months up until pretty much now, we're like trying a bunch of stuff with them. We definitely don't have it figured out yet, I'd say, but we have like customers for different products, basically. Like we have a couple dermatologists that are using one product, like a dozen that are using something else, and it's like we're just trying to like combine the things. We're like, okay, what is like the one product that every single one of them wants? But it's very
Mm,
clear that like if you solve one dude's problem, like they will pay you a lot more than the restaurants will pay you.
mm,
So like we see moonshot potential, but we're still kind of like talking to customers a lot and figuring out like exactly what they want. Why is this a problem? And we're really just trying to approach it from like a learner's mindset and like perfectly understand how a dermatology clinic runs, so that we can kind of build products that are useful for them. So still in the process, but I'd say that this is like the fun part for sure. Like you just get to learn about new problems and use your technical background to build them solutions.
yes.
So that's the story.
So I guess next question I have for you is what does like moonshot look like to you? What are you assuming when you get to this moonshot it would look like?
Yeah, it's a good idea. Good concept. I think there's two things. This is directly from like YC. I think for it to be a moonshot idea, you kind of have to think in your head like if every single thing goes your way for the next like 10 years, can this thing become like $1 billion company? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't do that because things will not go your way
Mm,
in realistic. So, as an example, if we take the restaurant thing, let's say everything goes our way, right?
mm,
Every single thing. Every restaurant decides one day they wake up and they're like, you know what, platter, that's the one I want. And all the restaurants say yes that we're cold calling. And all the customers stop ordering from DoorDash and they order only from platter. At the price points that we were charging people, even then we wouldn't be $1 billion company. right? Like DoorDash benefits from other things. They have drivers, they can charge delivery fees. They can upcharge restaurants and customers. We were just building websites for restaurants, right? So it was a little bit
Mm,
different. We did like the math even, and like you couldn't make that a huge company. And that's if everything went our way, which is unlikely. So
mm,
that's you can easily see how that's not a moonshot idea. Now, for dermatologists, if you just ask the same question, like, is if everything goes our way, all the dermatologists decide that they want this company and this product is the one that they want, and based on how much they pay us and based on how much patients they see, this is like a very huge, multi billion-dollar idea. If everything kind of goes your way. So moonshot, I think a lot of people use it in different terms, like we want to go after, space or something, and that's like a different concept. But I'm just saying, like, when deciding what to work on, if you know you want to start a billion-dollar company, like a well-known brand of a company, you have to ask those questions. So that's one thing. The other part is, how do you know when you kind of have it? YC kind of described um, product market fit specifically, like when customers really want what you're making, is it feels like drinking out of like a fire hose is what they said. So if you literally imagine like a fire hose that's just spraying water everywhere, if you try to like put it in your mouth and drink it, it's impossible. You will like you just like you can't. It's too much that's coming at you. And it's kind of the same thing with customers. Like if you have product market fit, there will be like so much demand for what you're having that you just can't keep up with it. Like there's just like so many things that are breaking, and there's like fires that you keep having to put out, and pretty much everybody, I heard this from YC, but then when I talk to people that clearly have product market fit, they all have this problem. It's like when you have it. It's like when you're not, you shouldn't ask like, oh, does the customer really like me, or are they just kind of like just coming because they like me, basically.
mm,
And for example, there was one YC like partner, like this is like one of the guys who runs it. He was making like a personal banking app. He's from the UK, and they just didn't have digital banking basically back like when he was running things. So here you can just go on your app and like see how much money is in your bank account or checking account. They just like didn't have that at some point in the UK, and so his company was the first one to do this. Like they made kind of like a Robinhood type of app where you could just go in and like deposit virtually and check your account balance in real time and things like that. And he was like, I knew we had product market fit when I sat in a room and our entire team that was like engineers, product managers, salespeople, everyone was not doing their role, and they were sitting and packaging boxes with like the cards that they were supposed to ship out to customers, because there was so many cards that we had to ship out, and we couldn't afford to hire someone yet, so we all had to like sit down and just package boxes and ship them out. So like
mm,
they just couldn't keep up with the amount of customers that they had. So they all had to like just not do engineering, not do anything else, just fulfill the customers. And he was like, that's when I knew I had product market fit, because we just couldn't keep up with it. So you never should ask the question, basically. Like if
mm,
you have to ask, then you don't have it. And you should probably like take some action until you have it. There's never a scenario where you're like, does the customer actually like me? Like Stripe, is
mm,
it really? It's not asking that question anymore. Do developers
mm,
really like Stripe, or are they just like faking it? Like, no, of
mm,
course they like Stripe. Like every billions of developers use it. Or Airbnb. Like, do you think the CEO of Airbnb is asking like, does the world really like staying at a stranger's home, or like are they like just faking it? Like, no, they get so many orders that they have to like raise so much money and build this huge company just to
mm,
keep up with the this thing that people want.
mm,
Um, and if you're not there within, I think there is like a time frame. Like usually
mhm,
it works, it works. It's not like, oh,
mhm,
I
mhm,
grind for
mhm,
a decade and then
mhm,
it works. Like it
mhm,
usually things just work. Yeah, I know there's a lot of advice in there and things like that.
mhm.
That's what I'd say.
Interesting. I think I'm getting to like the tail of all of it. And so, sort of, where do you think you guys are now?
Yeah, I think we're getting closer. Like we're learning a lot of lessons about like what things should look like
Mhm,
I'm telling you, and um like we're getting a lot better at the basic tactics of running a startup. Like there's just some lessons that you pick up along the way that are not natural. For example, like asking people for money, like it's like not like an easy thing, but it's a really easy way to see if what you're building is actually valuable or not. Just ask the person to pay. Another one is like, again, talking to customers is pretty important, like really early. And arguing in a room is like not going to get you there. So there's just like these small habits that we're getting better at, I think, as a team. And so while we haven't like made it yet or anything like that, like there are things that once you do them, you just like realize they're not like, okay, like I now know this is what I have to do. Fundraising is another one. Like I just know what fundraising looks like. It's not the social network, like glamorous thing. It's like, no, you just like hop on a Zoom meeting and it's very casual, and that's how fundraising looks. So I think like with enough of those lessons just compounding, you start to get closer and closer to like the goal of actually having like product market fit and things like that. So I'd say we're like in the middle of the journey, but it does feel like there is progress month over month.
If you were to go back and like re-architect all of this, say you have a child today and you wanted to architect them on the part of being like a startup founder and all of that, how would you run the process for that child?
That's a good question. I think for me, like YC definitely changed a lot of my perspective on this stuff. Like you just once you see successful people and they just tell you like how they did it, you start to realize there actually is like a way to do this. It's like finding the idea to work on, of course, is like still very 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 hard, but there are like very basic concepts that you just have to do. You have to charge people money, you have to, you have to talk to people, you have to get out of your house, you have to like just do things, you have to build, you have to code, you have to actually have a product. And some of these things just don't come naturally. So if I were to have it like a child today, like there is like a blueprint where you just have to go through it with them, like and actually like be practical about it. Like, okay, you have an idea, let's go try to do it. Have you done these things? Have you talked to 10 customers? Have you interviewed a bunch of people? Have you actually worked with some, have you like shadowed this person for a day and know what their life looks like? So I think going over that blueprint is very important to not waste time, basically, because we like during Quran Connect and Help and Course Finder and all these things, there's just like things that I didn't do. Like Course Finder, we didn't ask for money. I could have saved myself like a year of work if I just asked people for money early on, or figured out a way to generate money. Quran Connect was the same thing. We just like didn't talk to customers at all until like month 7 or something of the process. That was like a very big, very very big learning lesson that could have saved me months of time. So you can see like how that time kind of compounds over the years, and it would be nice if you just like learned these lessons earlier.
I'm asking this on the backdrop of, I don't know, we run this accelerator program, and I think that's basically what we're trying to get to. We're trying to mold like teams into like founders.
Hmm.
So I think off of the camera, I'll probably ask more of your feedback on that. But
Sure.
I think that, so as we end all of this, last question is sort of like two things. Out of all of this, if there is one lesson you've really learned from all of your startup journey, what would it be? So that if there is a founder that's sitting right in front that's about to start now, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think this one's actually pretty straightforward. I think the most important thing in all of this is the people you work with. It's very critical. Um, if you work with the wrong person for like a long time, no matter how much like grind you put into it, it's just like not gonna work. Like that's just like the reality of it. It's co-founders are almost like marriages to an extent, and if you're like married to the wrong person, that's like gonna destroy your life and like your kids and like just your mood. Like everything is just not going well if you have a bad marriage. And co-founding a company is the same thing. Like nothing in the company is going to work if you're working with the wrong people. So I would say I think a mistake I've made in the past is just picking like co-founders without that much thought into it. It's like, oh well, like I knew this person for a while, so like might as well start a company with them. Like you don't think about like a spouse like that, right? Like you
Mhm.
you should really put more thought into it if you're doing it correctly. And a co-founder is just the same thing. So really figure out like what you're good at and what you need in a co-founder to succeed. Like how can we be complementary? do I like working with these people? Can I work with them for 10 years? That's how long it takes to build a company. So pick your people well. And it's like, if you don't find the right person, like, work alone for a little bit until you find the right person. Don't just like pick someone because you have to or something. Like, it's totally fine if it takes a while. Brian Armstrong, who's the co-founder of Coinbase, huge company worth like $80 billion or something like that. He started solo, and the reason that he was solo is um, he was really interested in like cryptocurrency. And at that time there was a research paper called, it was just like the Bitcoin paper. It was like 2005 or something. And he was really interested in it. He was just like a nerd about it. He saw it online and he was just like, wow, like this is the coolest thing ever. Like, it's going to change everything. He was like really nerdy about it, but he couldn't find a lot of other people that were also nerdy about it. And he went through YC and fundraised and built the initial product. And he just did so much like alone, basically. And then he found someone that was really nerdy about Bitcoin. He was just like, oh wow, I also think this is the coolest thing ever. And they worked together for a couple of months just as like a trial. And then he realized, oh, like I could work with this person for 10 years. This was like 2 years after founding Coinbase. And then this guy was brought in as like a co-founder to help run the company. And they're a perfect co-founder match. Like, to build a company like Coinbase, you have to be really passionate about this like cryptocurrency stuff. You can't just want to build a startup. Like, you have to be this kind of person. So you should, I think, as like a new founder, like really take away a lot of lessons from that. Like figure out your people, take your time, and understand that the people you work with are going to make or break the company. And in a lot of cases, they break the company if you don't pick the right person. So this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and you should really think about it when you're starting a company.
Wow. Thank you so much. Two last questions. I know I keep saying last questions, but so it's first question is, how has like Islam sort of like played a role in like all of this for you, sort of in action? There's the first question. And sort of the title of this podcast is like Teens, Tech, and AI. What I think we had some perspective about AI earlier, but what sort of like your thought about where you see sort of AI going in like the future? Those two questions.
Sure, yeah. So to answer the first one, how has Islam kind of shaped a role for me? I think the really great thing about Islam is that it is, it's like it is like a way of like life. It's almost like a guidebook to like how to live and how to interact with people, and it helps informs a lot of decisions that I like just make day to day. Like, there's like certain principles that as a Muslim you have to follow. Like, don't lie, don't cheat, treat people with like respect, respect your elders. Like, there's just like a lot of very like simple but like core principles. Like, you're not a good Muslim if you're not a Muslim if you're lying. That's like a hadith, right? Like, you're not supposed to lie. There's a lot of values that are not good. Like, being greedy is not good. You have to be fair to others. There's like a bunch of like ethical things. And you would kind of be surprised that like a lot of people without religion at their heart, like they just like don't have that. Like, they're not like ethically bad people, but like every now and then they'll just do something because it's like, okay, like they'll lie or they'll cheat or they'll like do something greedy, or they just like won't act from a place of like values. So I think my biggest thing is like really studying Islam makes you like a better founder, because when you have those values, people actually like you like a lot more. When you don't lie, when you're not greedy, when you're nice to others, when you smile, like things like that. They just make you like a very likable person. So I think for me, like every time I read Quran pretty much like every day, and it's like you do you do take away a lot of values from the stories of the Quran. Also, another thing which is just super basic is like startups take a really long time, and for the most part, the long time is not working. It's nothing is working for most of the time, and then for a very small period, things are working. Um, and the amount of stories that we have in Islam about like not giving up and like working hard, and like when things are really horrible, like make dua, like look at Sayyidina Yunus' story, and you'll see like a lot of lessons there that can inspire you, or Sayyidina Yusuf's story. And those are like inspiring. Like, we have like inspiring like current stories, like you can read about Steve Jobs or something and be inspired, but there's actually quite a lot of stories from the Quran and Hadith that like really get you going. So a lot of that has been pretty core to me. As for the other question, how do I kind of see AI going forward? That's a tough one. I think things are like moving really fast. So my general opinion recently has been like it's becoming like increasingly hard to like keep up with like the things that are happening. It feels like every week, if you just like are on Twitter or anything, you'll see like a lot of changes. Like every week, there's like new model changes, and like someone built something really cool that went viral or something, and it's hard to see like where things are gonna settle. I do think that this is like unpopular. I think among especially like AI researchers that I know, there is like it does feel like we're in a little bit of a bubble. Like there's definitely some overhype in some directions, but there's also like quite a lot of opportunity. I think it's becoming just so much easier to build things. But what's really interesting about that is our problem as a society before AI was not like building things. Like we could pretty much build like anything that we had in mind, but like knowing what to build is still a problem until today. So I think just because it's become really easy to build does not mean there will be like instantly more products that come to market that are useful, right? You still have to talk to customers and you still have to understand pain points and things like that. So I think I would just be cautious a little bit of like over excitement about AI stuff, whether it's like coding tools or products that are like AI native or something like that. And you always just have to go back to first principles, like what's the problem that we're trying to solve, and what cool tech can I have to solve it. Steve Jobs had like a pretty famous quote where he was like, most people um, I'm paraphrasing, most people start with the technology and they go like work backwards to the user experience. They're like, we have this really cool technology, like what user experiences can we now apply to it? But that's like the wrong way of thinking. The right way is you start with the user experience and work backwards to the technology. So you really think like, how do I think humans should do this thing? So how do I think that humans should order food? And then you work backwards and be like, okay, like the perfect way to order food is you pull out your phone, you press a button, and food shows up. That's like the perfect way to do it. Now let's work backwards. How do we do that? We need drivers, we need restaurants to accept orders, we need online menus, we need like an app, like all of those things. But you have to start with the core user experience first. And I think a lot of people in AI are kind of doing the reverse a little bit sometimes, where like AI is the cool tech, and now like what can we apply it to? But really, it should be like, okay, AI is new. Let's like now think, now that we have AI, like what's the dream user experience? Can AI solve this? No? Okay, then I guess nothing new has changed.
Yeah.
uh, so that would be my opinion.
Wow. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, I'm just gonna say, do you have anything else, any last words, anything you want to say just before we like close out?
Um, yeah, this was really fun. I think more people should try the founder thing. I'd say like it's all this stuff I said about taking a long time and it's hard and stuff. It's still worth trying, especially if you're young, because a lot of it is really fun. Even when things are not going well, if you're working with the right people, it's just like a fun experience to be a part of. So give it a try and feel free to reach out to me or Abdulaziz you as well if there's any questions and things we can help out with.
Jazakumullah khairan, Ziad. I've really loved this so much. I really, really love it. I'm on the founder's journey myself, so I've gotten like so much lessons from this, and I hope to talk again soon. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no worries, man. Thank you so much for
All
having
right.
me.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. So
Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.